This is Minda Wilson with Urgent Care. I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Hammer.
Pleasure to be with you.
So, with all the stress around families and stuff, I understand you developed this GAIN method for sort of helping people deal with stress and providers deal with stress when they're in a highly stressful situation. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, I've been speaking about physician wellness and wellness for healthcare professionals for some time, and I've also been teaching meditation to my trainees, medical students, residents, fellows. And I realized as I was talking about this mindfulness and medicine approach more and more, it would be helpful if I had an acronym so people could remember what the foundations were of this practice. And excuse me, that's how GAIN came to me. GAIN is an acronym for gratitude, acceptance, intention, and non-judgment. And we can talk more about those elements, but I think those are the four pillars of resilience and therefore happiness.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit more about how they work, about the pillars and how they work together.
Sure. Well, I think that gratitude, first of all, is central to many philosophies and teachings related to happiness. One can be blind or deaf and happy. One can be poor and happy. But you'll never see a person who's happy who is not grateful. So gratitude, I think, is a good place to start, and we all have much for which to be thankful. I think this is a perfect time of year, of course, to connect with our gratitude. And as tough as COVID has been for many people around the world, we should be thankful that we have access to the internet. We can, at least in many parts of the United States, order food online. We can connect with our families virtually, if not physically, and compare that to the great influenza pandemic of 100 years ago, when we didn't have any of those things. And so technology has brought us a long way. Of course, it's a double-edged sword, but we can be very thankful that we have access to connect with our families. And like many others, I'm not traveling to see my family this week, but I will be able to connect with them via Skype or FaceTime. And so even in the midst of horrific times such as these, there are things for which to be thankful. The A in GAIN is acceptance, because we can't just do what some have called a spiritual bypass, where we sort of pronounce and convince ourselves that everything is rosy. We do have to face our pain and suffering. And so in the second stage, if you will, of the GAIN meditation, we, while remaining in touch with our breath and sitting quietly in a comfortable place, we think of that which brings us pain and suffering, and we actually visualize opening our chest and opening our hearts and bringing these feelings that are causing us pain and suffering closer and closer till we merge with them, and there's really no separation between those painful experiences and the rest of our experience. And when we do that, we often see that what we were afraid of or what was causing us pain and suffering is not as bad as we thought, and we can live with it. We can accept it. The I in GAIN is for intention, and John Kabat-Zinn, and I'm paraphrasing, defined mindfulness as being aware of the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. And that means that we can be in charge of our thought processes. It takes practice, but our brains, even over the age of 30, remain plastic, and we have the ability to focus on what we have rather than what we don't have. And so we can overcome our negativity bias, by virtue of which we tend to remember the negative things and forget the positive things. But we have to practice it intentionally. And so an example of that is the Three Good Things program at Duke University, where they've shown in thousands of people in their study that simply by thinking of three good things that happen during the day as we prepare for bed, we actually sleep better and we are happier. So that's a really great example of being intentional about a very small practice that can have a big impact on our lives. And again, we can intentionally practice gratitude, acceptance. We can intentionally rewire our brains away from our negativity bias to a more positive way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And the end in game is for non-judgment. And, Minda, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people and calling this good and that bad. And it's really exhausting. And I would say overall, it really doesn't help us in any way. And so we can learn incrementally to just let go of our judgments of other people, and then ultimately, that which is more difficult, let go of self-judgment. We can just see the world exactly as it is.
Right, but when we're looking at the situation, our current economic situation, our current pandemic situation, people are struggling with, basic survival issues, basic health issues, basic economic issues. I mean, and then health issues also feed into economic issues. So, so it seems that you can use this to sort of make a more positive attitude, but how do you adopt sort of this coping skills when that sort of lizard brain of yours is afraid of what's happening around you?
Sure. Well, again, even though things are tough, for most people, they could be worse. And I know that sounds a little funny, but in fact, we should be grateful for having what we do. And again, it's a matter of intentionally contemplating those things that we have that we're grateful for, our kids, our loved ones, our health. Even those of us who are not in perfect health, things could certainly be worse. And so we can be grateful for this day as another day on the right side of the grass, as a friend of mine would say. We can contemplate those things that cause us discomfort and anxiety and sit quietly and open our hearts and accept them, because life is difficult. There's no doubt about it, whether there's a pandemic or not. Life is a struggle for all of us. We all have our own sources of pain and suffering. I have a wonderful, wonderful life. I'm very thankful for it. On the other hand, 3 years ago, I lost my 29-year-old son. And, there's nothing I can do about it, and we need to accept things that we can't change. And so I understand that people are suffering. This is a tough time, but things could be much worse. Let's remember to be grateful while accepting the hardships in front of us. And, we have developed an obsession with thinking about the past and the future, and I call those thoughts either adaptive or maladaptive. Adaptive consideration of the future, for example, would be, planning for happy times and planning to put bread on the table, so to speak. But otherwise, thinking of the future based on our negativity bias, we tend to catastrophize. And so when we think about the future in these maladaptive ways, it brings fear and anxiety. And once we recognize that we can change the way we think, and that here we are, I just realized I'm fixated on what's going to happen and anxious about the future, we can actually steer our thought processes away to more positive things that are happening in the present moment, rather than obsessing on the future. Yes.
Right, and there have been a lot of studies about brain waves changes in brain waves during meditation, and and that it affects not just the brain, but just the chemical balances in the brain, which also affects your ability to cope. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Being positive begets positivity. And again, that's not to sweep painful things under the rug, quite the reverse. It's actually through breathing them in and facing them and accepting them that helps us realize we can live with them. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. When we think in a positive, pragmatic way, it actually has its own effect on the brain, and this can be a positive feedback loop, if you will. We can have more and more positivity in our thought process as we practice these ways of being and ways of thinking.
So the key, what I'm hearing you say is the key to what you say is a certain pragmatism. It's sort of like the Alcoholic Anonymous, give me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, and just sort of look around you and say, this is what's going on now, accept it, and then sort of look in small steps as a way to move forward, and see that there can be a way to move forward. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You've got it. And what you quoted was the Serenity Prayer. And so we do need to identify on purpose what we can change and what we cannot change. And we need to accept those things that we cannot change instead of just filling our minds with negative thoughts and frankly complaining about our circumstances. So it's true that things are very difficult for many of us at this time in particular, but we can bring those thoughts closer and until we can answer the question, can I live with these feelings forever? And the answer is yes.
Right. And what I'm also hearing you say is that by being able to say, I can't change this, but by being able to say, I can change this other thing, it's sort of empowering because you can make that small change for that thing you have control over, and that gives you a sense of power and control and makes you feel a little bit more positive about how you can affect results in your life. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
Yes. And as I said, this is a process. So let's not be judgmental of ourselves if we have a bad day or what have you, but let's bring ourselves back to this present moment and be mindful of what's happening right now. And as we take baby steps to do this, you're correct. We get a little hit of dopamine. We get a little sense of reassurance and confidence, and that can lead to more of the same. And this can grow, and we can look back after embracing this practice for 3 to 6 months and say, wow, I've really come a long way. I'm really aware that I have control over the way I think and therefore the way I live.
So those little moments of sort of like evaluation and then the ability and then execution, even in a situation where things appear hopeless, sort of can turn your attitude around about your future and the way you manage your life. Is that sort of what I'm hearing as well?
Absolutely.
Yes. So by following your program, then people can sort of learn this ability to identify what they can do, what they can't do, and then sort of manage the things they can, and then move themselves in a positive direction incrementally.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the way we learn is by taking baby steps, but through repetition. Mm-hmm. So in the book, I describe the GAIN method, the GAIN meditation. And, this started from conversations with my trainees, my students, residents, and fellows who said they didn't have time to go to a yoga class and they tried meditating, but it didn't work, etc. And this led me to say, well, what about just at least getting off on the right foot every day? And so the GAIN meditation is just as little as 3 minutes, where we get up in the morning, we do our morning hygiene thing, and then we sit in a quiet place in a comfortable position, and we get in touch with our breath, focusing on the breath coming in through our nose and out through our mouth and slowing it down. This kind of slows down our heart rate also and decreases the adrenaline in our body. And then we go through a contemplation of gratitude. We can think of the things for which we're grateful, our family, our loved ones, another day, on the planet, etc. And then acceptance. And, for me, the first thing I think of is my beloved son. We all have hardship that we need to confront and open our arms and hearts and accept. And then we move on again with our eyes closed and focused on our breath to intention. We can think of 3 good things that happened yesterday or today, 3 good things that will happen. So tonight I'll think of this lovely talk we're having, Minda, as well as a couple of other things I have planned for the day that I'm sure will be happy events. And then we transition to non-judgment. We actually visualize seeing the world exactly as it is. We don't have to label it good or bad, too much of this, too little of that. We simply accept everything we experience as it is right now, and then we can accept ourselves. And then we go back to our breath and open our eyes, and we can choose elements of this practice that we'll focus on during the day. So today I pledge to be non-judgmental. Let's say the first person I see while I'm driving in my car that changes lanes without signaling, etc., and I realize I'm starting to make a judgment about that person, and I just let it go. And I kind of have a laugh for it. So it's, again, baby steps, as little as a 3-minute contemplative meditation in the morning, and then, maybe 3 good things practice as we turn the bed sheets down at night. And after a period of time doing this every day, we realize that actually, yes, our thought processes have started to change toward the positive, and we're happier people. So this is something we're all capable of, and it's a very simple practice when you really get right down to it.
Right. It's interesting. I saw, I read about a study that somebody did with people who were uncomfortable wearing masks and uncomfortable when people asked them to wear masks. And so the person took those people and explained to them the backstory of why somebody might come up to them and ask them to wear a mask. So, for example, one of the people that came up to ask them to wear a mask was immunosuppressed, and another person that asked them to wear a mask was, taking care of an elderly person that was highly at risk for COVID. And it seemed, and so the anger in those people, when they started understanding the backstories of why these people were asking, tended to dissipate, which is what you're talking about, like being aware that maybe something's going on with the other person, and you're part of a community that you can help people, and then they feel good because they're connected and they're doing something for somebody else. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely. And when a person is asked to wear a mask and they're opposed to it, the first thing that happens is they make a judgment about the individual who's asking. They say, well, this person is controlling, or is a left-wing crazy person, or telling me what to do. And we make these judgments, and we can learn to just let go of those judgments and not call that person good or bad in our minds, or to this or to that. And when we do that, we actually turn a potentially aggravating experience into a positive experience. And we don't really have to think too much about why the person is asking us. If we simply drop the judgment of that person when they do, we have really turned a negative situation into a neutral or a positive situation. I tell the story in the book of how I ride my bike to work every day, and there's a beautiful lane that I traverse, and it's covered with a lovely canopy of tree branches and leaves, and the sun is kind of low in the sky, filtering through early in the morning. And I come across a person who is walking in the middle of the path, And I get closer and I see they have buds in their ears and they're staring at their screen, even though this is just such a lovely environment. Why are they doing that? And they're in my way. And then I catch myself and I just let go of all judgments about that person. And by the time I pass them, I look at them and smile, and they look at me and smile. And it's been a pleasant experience instead of a source of aggravation. And that's just one very simple example of how judging other people causes us to generate negative thoughts. And this is completely unnecessary. And we can adopt this very simple practice of non-judgment and, again, change our experience from being negative to positive. It's not that difficult.
Right. And so going back to the mask example, when you look at it from a sense of non-judgmental, you're actually doing a favor for someone. You're being benevolent, you're being gracious, and that feels good. You know, all those things feel good, right?
Absolutely.
And that translates.
Actually, our own intention, we can modify our experience, and we're capable of having a much more positive set of experiences every day than we actually have. But we need to be attentive. We need to do this on purpose, and we need to recognize why it's helpful to us and others if we drop our judgments.
Right.
And I think the thing is that we're mainly hardest on ourselves. And I think for many of us, most difficult to drop self-judgment. But when we get to the point where we're much less judgmental of others, it will occur to us it's only logical that we're treating ourselves similarly and dropping judgments of ourselves and accepting ourselves as what we are and who we are.
Yeah, I think that's so true. So if people want to learn more about you, gain without pain, or resilience and stress reduction, what's the best way for them to do it?
I have a website. It's all lowercase, greghammermd.com, GREGHAMMERMD.com. There are lots of links to media on that site and a link to Amazon where you can get the first book. And hopefully in the not too distant future, there'll be the ability to get the second one, which is a pocket book, which is called Gain Without Pain, Your Happiness Handbook. So greghammermd.com.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to meet you. I think what you're doing is a valuable service and can be used in these times when things are so heated to significantly reduce stress for everyone and to make the world a better, sort of kinder place towards other people as well. So thank you, Dr. Hammer. It's been a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you, Minda. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, this is Minda Wilson for Urgent Care.